Okay, not sure if you guys can hear me, but I'm doing this from work, so I don't really have a lot of options here. But I wanted to talk to you guys really quick about this. Probably have about 20 minutes to talk about this or so I figured I'd give you guys a quick rundown of what I think about the Balance Dataslate with this horrible work webcam that I have. So yeah, I read this morning when I woke up, and pretty much everything we discussed in the leak the other day in the video I made a couple days ago is true, which is surprising to me. I thought that there wouldn't be that much truth to it. So we can look here. Devastating wounds no longer cause mortal wounds, but instead bypass armor and invul saves. So basically it means that wounds can't carry over to new models, which is great. This is what I've been asking for from the beginning. You can see there, for example, you can now shoot an infantry unit with an anti-tank weapon, or you can't shoot an infantry unit with an anti-tank weapon and expect to wipe out the whole unit because you rolled a 6 to wound. Yes, right? This is the restriction they put on the Leagues of Votann last edition in 9th, and it was a great fix to the faction. Made them really balanced. They also said they changed Overwatch. Let's go ahead and just look at the exact rules, because when GW talks, I don't really listen that much. Let's just actually look at the Balance Dataslate and see what they did with the core rules. So, by the way, I mean, they basically did everything that leak said. So even though Ospec said it was really dodgy, ended up being pretty much word for word correct. So devastating wounds, weapons with devastating wounds in their profile. Each time an attack is made with that weapon, if that attack scores a critical wound, no saving throw of any kind can be made against the attack, including invulnerable saves. Such attacks are only allocated to models after all other attacks made by the attacking unit have been allocated and resolved. Saving throws cannot be made. Okay, so basically, wounds don't carry over, right? That's the main thing about this. Stratagems that can be used more than once per phase or turn. Rules that allow you to use a stratagem even if another unit has been targeted by that stratagem this phase or turn, but do not specify the name of the stratagem, can only be used to use battle tactic stratagems. Again, this is exactly what the leak said, right? I mean, verbatim, basically. So there you go. That leak was actually, legit, which was surprising to me at the least. And again, sorry guys for the kind of bad quality. It's at work, so the work webcam isn't the best. I actually had to restart it because there were some configuration issues. Modifying a stratagem CP cost. Rules that modify the CP cost of a stratagem. Oh, that's the same thing here. Okay, so that's what we talked about. Great. Fire Overwatch. If that enemy unit is visible to your unit, this means that if you cannot see the unit, you cannot overwatch it, even with indirect fire. You cannot target a Titanic unit with this stratagem. So, hey, guess what? The Wraith Knight can't overwatch anymore. That's done. So the Wraith Knight basically saying, okay, I'm going to overwatch you and, basically just blow you out of the water with devastating wounds. That combination is completely destroyed. Devastating wounds don't carry over. Can't fire overwatch with that thing. And the Wraith Knight also got a points hike, which we'll look at. So that was a little bit unfortunate, but, probably just want to kill that thing in competitive play would be my assumption. Insane Bravery cannot be used more than once per battle. So Battle Shock means more now. They basically took the community's, restlessness about Battle Shock and laid it to rest. You can only use it once per battle. Ruins. So this is what we're talking about with towering models. Towering models that are within this terrain feature can also see out of it normally. However, Titanic models can no longer draw a line of sight to the target on the other side of it if they're not in it. So if a Titanic model is behind ruins, it can no longer see behind other ruins. It is affected by obscuring terrain in the same way as any other model. Aircraft models are the exception. So aircraft were the exception before. They are still the exception. Aircraft can do this. Other units cannot. Towering units cannot. So I think I mean, aircraft still interesting, right? For ignoring line of sight, although they kind of need that because they have to start from reserve. So I think that's an okay change right there, in my opinion. Okay. Faction rules. Eldari. And by the way, I've read all these. I think they're good. I basically had a similar idea for Death Guard the other day, and I think that's great that they actually added that. GW is finally doing something about this, terrible rules, kind of introduction they gave us into 10th with certain armies. Eldari. Phantasm. Look at that, Phantasm. Target one Eldari infantry unit from your army. So instead of one Eldari unit, it's now infantry unit. So you can't do it with jet bikes, you can't do it with vehicles or monsters. It needs to be infantry. Funnily enough, this does not prevent you from using it on Wraith construct infantry units like Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades, which I think is hilarious, which makes them, even faster. I know you could do this before with anything, but it's funny that they just said infantry here instead of, preventing Wraith constructs, vehicles, and monsters from doing it. They basically just said infantry. So that includes the Wraith Guard. So Wraith Guard can use this indeed, which is kind of cool. Okay. They made a bunch of other changes to Adeptus Custodes. Basically, their squad sizes have been reduced considerably, which again was also in the league, strangely enough. It's uncanny, right? I didn't even think that some of that stuff I thought may be just conjecture or not like very true, but turns out it was to the exact amount. Leagues of Votann. Looks like they're having, okay, this is good, right? At the start of the battle, select a number of units from your opponent's army depending on the battle size. So those units start out with, well, I don't know much about, okay, yeah, each of those units start out with 2 battle tokens or judgment tokens. So that's good. Leagues of Votann getting just basically 4 units with judgment tokens right off the bat. That's great. That means they're getting +1 to hit against them, +1 to wound against them. And that's good. So I think Leagues of Votann a little bit stronger. They probably have a lot of points fixes too, so I think they will be better. I think their main issue before was that there were just too many points and they didn't get enough judgment tokens. So I like this. Gene Stealer Colts. You have to roll the dice now for reinforcements. You add 1 to the result of its battle line, and you also add 1 to the result if it's a first or second battle round. So later on in the game, it becomes harder for Gene Stealer Colt to actually get their battle line units and other units back. And it's only on a 5+. So it's kind of hard to actually get those units out on the table, and you could still counter them, right, by moving within range of their tokens. Okay, so now Outriders, the Jackals, need to basically set up within 9 inches of the battlefield edge, and they need to touch a Colt ambush marker. So that's good. That means you can't just spread them out throughout the field and block off everything. So that was a cheese that a lot of Gene Stealer Colt players were using, and now that's done. So they got rid of that. Actually, pretty impressed with GW's rules here. I think a lot of the changes make sense. I asked for a lot of these changes, and I think these are good. So, they obviously spent some time thinking about this and getting some feedback from the community, and not just listening to all the naysayers who were just like saying, nerf Eldar, to the ground, burn them to the ground. I actually think these are things that are good to change. Yes, these affect Eldar. These affect the Wraith Knight in particular. These 2 abilities, I think, basically make the Wraith Knight a lot worse in competitive play and in general, but that's okay, right? Because not all of us are, playing tournament, going to tournaments every weekend, stuff like that, and just absolutely wrecking with the Wraith Knight. Also, I think the change in visibility is also a big thing, so yeah. Let's go ahead and look at something else real quick. I wanted to show you guys the field manual. I don't have that much time left because I have to start work in about 8 minutes. So I wanted to go over this with you guys, though, and tell you what I thought. I'm going to make a video on this later today. I don't know how well you can see this, but if you have this pulled up on your own computers or devices, these are the points nerfs. And I think for the most part, they make sense. There's a few that are way off to me. I think those are just reactionary knee-jerk pulls by GW, but I think most of them make sense. Zerman 135. Don't know why he got increased by 10 points. That one didn't make sense. I understand Overwatch is powerful, but you didn't increase Dire Avengers, so I didn't really understand that too much. Autark and the Autark Skyrunner got increased by 10 points. The Autark Wayleaper got increased by 35 points, guys. I think 35. Yeah, 35 points. That's insane. So it's because it was being used in every single list. I understand that, and Lone Operative is very powerful, but still, I mean, that's a big increase. I think you may see people just going back to the regular Autark and hiding the regular Autark behind some line-of-sight blocking terrain and just hoping he survives, because 115 points is a lot. I might still just run the Wayleaper just because I like the model, but I think some people might actually convert to the Autark. I think the Skyrunner is still awful. I don't think the Skyrunner, I don't know why they increased the cost of the Skyrunner. I think it was pretty bad, but anyway. Avatar of Cain, they increased. They nerfed the points on that, which it's funny because I just did a video on this thing saying how good it was. They increased it by 40 points. I think it's still going to be good at 335. I think it's still going to be good. So, there's that. However, the combination with a Farseer is much more expensive. I'll go into that in a second. Dark Reapers, funnily enough, got increased by 5 points. And this is just because of one thing, guys. This is because the Exarch had the Tempest Launcher. That's it. It's basically a 5-point upgrade now for the Tempest Launcher. So you have to think of it like that. It's not because Dark Reapers were OP or anything. It's just because they had an indirect fire option that was not hit with the previous data slate. Eldrad got increased by 10 points. And again, this is because of the basically ability to change a dice into a 6 if you have another Farseer on the field, I think. Because just having more Fate dice and having Doom isn't really worth a points increase, in my opinion. I don't think you see Eldrad that much. You don't really see him much now. I think he's a niche pick. But I don't know why they increased them. That made no sense to me. That's one of those, that doesn't make sense nerfs. Farseer, 80 points. This made sense. People were abusing it. There you go, right? 80 points for Farseer, increased by 15 points. Farseer Skyrunner, increased by 15 points. Again, people were using them. It's really good. You have guide on it. You can hide it really well. You can have the Phoenix Gem and stuff like that. I think that's you could see that coming probably. Fire Prism 180. This is not what I saw coming. Now, I kind of saw an increase here, but I didn't see a 30-point increase. So I think people either go to running 2 Fire Prisms, which I think is fine, right? 2 Fire Prisms is still really good, still gives you a lot of firepower. You can't Phantasm them anymore, so you have to spend more resources with them. So I think, logically speaking, people who are running Fire Prisms are going to run 2 of them. That's just my out-of-the-gate thought with that. So Fire Prisms are much weaker now. Other options are going to look much stronger by comparison. The Yinkarn got nerfed. Man, the Yinkarn, guys, that thing got nerfed hard. 350. So now you have to spend 350 points for this thing. It's really good. It's still a really good model. They didn't nerf its ability, so you can still abuse it. It's just you're going to have to pay more points for it, which is fine. And the funny thing is I was actually running this thing in my Ynnari list, and it was carrying a lot of games. It was easily clearing 350 worth of points every single game that I was doing well in. I think there was one game where it got stuck into a Bloodthirster or something ridiculous like that and just got wiped. But other than that, it's pretty good. I think 350 is still fine. Support weapons, I think this is just insult to injury. I don't know if anybody's going to run a support weapon at 125 points. Even the D-Cannon, with the nerf to indirect fire not being able to overwatch at all, and, the devastating wounds nerf, I don't know if you take a support weapon. I may be off, but I just don't think maybe you take one, but that's about it. I really don't think it's that great. for the points. Night Spinner got increased by 10 points. Not a big deal, you know. Increasing the Night Spinner by 10 points is, I guess, okay. It's the same points as the Fire Prism now, so they're kind of equal in points. I think the Night Spinner is still a great utility piece. I just don't think it's a great damage piece anymore, especially with the nerf to Devastating Wounds. So, still good. Excuse me. Still good, just not as good. Illic Night Spear, 5-point increase. And I think this is just because of the fact that he gives his unit basically lone operative. So I understand this. I mean, 5 points really isn't a big deal. I don't know why they hit that, but there you go. There it is. The Void Weaver got increased. Now, some of you guys may be laughing at this because it's not really necessary, right? I mean, there was nothing wrong with the Void Weaver, but the reason they increased it, guys, is because Fire Prisms got increased. So they said, hey, what's the alternative to a Fire Prism? Void Weaver. We don't want people spamming Void Weavers now in competitive play. Oh my God, we need to nerf. So they nerfed. They nerfed the fuck out of it. They nerfed it by, that's a pretty hefty, that's a 25% increase in points. So that's not anything to laugh at. However, I still think the Void Weaver pretty cost effective for that. Viper got increased by 10 points, probably because they didn't do anything to Strands of Fate or Unparalleled Mastery, which, by the way, I didn't think they should have. I was always claiming that they shouldn't have fixed that. So there we go. There's that. Warwalkers, 110 points. They nerfed Warwalkers. Again, I mean, I get it. Strands of Fate, Unparalleled Mastery was really strong with these guys. I just don't know if 110 points was justified. Maybe 100 points, maybe 100, but I don't know. Time will tell on that one. I still like the Warwalker. I think it's good, but I think it's a little bit too expensive. Yeah, but with the faction ability and the detachment stuff, I think these are still solid. Warp Spiders got increased. Well, we saw this coming. 115 points. I thought it was going to be more. I'm going to be honest. So I think this is fine. Warp Spiders are still good for their cost. Their Overwatch is pretty much unaffected. Their Devastating Wounds is unaffected, really, because their wounds didn't carry over anyway, so they're still solid. Wraithguard increased to 170 for 5 and 340 for 10. So basically the same as Wraith Blades, which I think is fine, right? I think that's a fine nerf. That's kind of what I thought in the beginning. I thought that they should be the same cost. This makes Wraith Blades a little bit more attractive, but not by much. I think the Wraith Blades are going to be mainly for holding objectives. If you need something really tough to hold objectives, Wraith Blades are your, unit. If you need something to basically take care of heavy stuff, Wraithguard are your unit. I still think Wraithguard are good. I just don't think they're the best, but they're really tough. So paying 170 points for a unit, putting a Spirit Seer in it, maybe with a Phoenix Gem or perhaps not the Weeping Stones, the Fate's Messenger is still a good option. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention this. Wow. Can't believe it. Death Jester got increased by 15 points. So I saw this coming. I think the Death Jester was too efficient, especially with the Fate's Messenger. I think it's still good, though. I think, I bought a Death Jester the other day, so I'm not proxying. I don't have just a random Shuriken Cannon model anymore proxying it. I have an actual Jester coming in the mail, and I don't think 90 points for this thing is that bad. I think I'm still going to field it at 90. I think it's still pretty good for what it is. And the Wraith Knight got increased to 510 points, so that's a nerf. I think it's not a huge nerf, but it is kind of significant in that it's going to be a lot more resource intensive. You're going to have to spend more points on it and stuff like that. And furthermore, it just looks like it's just not competitive anymore because it can't ignore line of sight, really. Can't ignore ruins. Devastating Wounds don't carry over, and it lost the ability to Overwatch. So there you go. Wraith Knight, garbage. I think it goes right back on the shelf, unfortunately, unless you're running it differently. If you're running it differently, then it's probably still good. Now that is not to be said of the Skatach Wraith Knight. Again, or Skata Wraith Knight. I forgot how to pronounce it. God, this thing is tough to pronounce. Anyway, this Wraith Knight is 490. They did increase its points by about 15, I want to say. I think 15, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's still good. Its weapon options are really good and has the ability to go in and out of reserve once a game. So I actually like this Wraith Knight. If you're going to run a Wraith Knight and you want to have fun with it, you don't want to just, basically have a subpar model, this is your model right here. Right? This variant of the Wraith Knight is actually pretty cool. And it's not super competitive, but it's good and has good weapons. And you don't need to rely on ignoring line of sight for it, because it's going to be moving up the battlefield with the rest of your army. Its weapons are a little bit shorter range. Shadow Specters got nerfed. Oh, who would have thought? By 15 points. I think that's fine. You know, I expected to see him at 100 points a unit. So having a 95 point, to me, that's a win. So these guys are still really good. They didn't lose any of their abilities. You can still Phantasm if you want to, because they're infantry. So there you go. Shadow Specters, still good. Warp Hunter got a nerf for some reason. I don't know why, but there it is. Got a 10-point nerf, which I find hilarious. It wasn't that good before. It's not that good now. Links. Well, we saw this coming too, right? The links getting increased. Somebody called this. I can't remember who it was, but somebody in my Discord called this and basically said that, yeah, the links is next because the Fire Prism, they don't want it to compete, you know, with the Fire Prism for points. So there we go. It's 180, same as the Fire Prism. I don't think you take a Lynx over a Fire Prism, but it is still a good model. It's, you know, very effective. It's very fast. It can get line of sight very easily and stuff like that. So if you guys don't know, the Lynx has a rule where it auto advances 9 and it has an assault pulsar. So it can actually advance and shoot. The Hornet is 100 points. So they nerfed that by 20 points. That makes sense. The Hornet was undercosted for what it could do. And I think that's a good change. I agree with that change. That's fine. The Hornet was, in my opinion, a better Warwalker in a lot of cases. And putting it up to, again, I don't know why they nerfed the Warwalker so badly, but, you know, I guess it showed up in a couple competitive lists and they thought, oh, better nerf, right? But yeah, Hornet, pretty solid. None of the enhancements got increased in points, so that's also good. I'm going to be doing a full video on this today. I wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of just hear my thoughts about this in general, but I'm going to probably have a more refined version in the video form. Is there anything I didn't talk about? Let's see. Before we log off today, because I have to start work and people are going to be wondering what I'm doing. Okay. No, we talked about everything. That's probably my class. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out. I'll see you guys next time. And look forward to that video this week.